Hi, this is Kevin Harlan of CBS, and you're watching Dolphins HQ. This is your source for everything Miami Dolphins.
What is up, Dolphins, and welcome into the beautiful Baptist Health Training Complex for a brand new episode of Dolphins HQ, and this one is jam-packed. We're heading out west to Seattle. We'll talk about the matchup against the Seahawks. We'll also hear from the man on the call for CBS, Kevin Harlan, as he joins us on the show. And it's also all 22 season, breaking down the film of running back De'Von Achane. And speaking of running backs, there's a new trend in the NFL. Running the football, it's cool again. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. Dolphins HQ starts right now. Let's go.
He's got Hill. That's a touchdown.
And they sack him again. This time it's Sealer.
That's how you win in this league.
We're 2 games into the new campaign, and by now, everybody's predictions, fantasy leagues, survivor pools have surely been turned upside down. And September in the NFL is all about learning. While the Dolphins have notched 1 win in their first 2 starts, this time of year is all about finding out who you are as a football team. Defensively, the Dolphins look to have found something in new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, and that's where we pick it up here with our Week 3 difference makers. The middle of the field is valuable real estate in this game. Few quarterbacks can create and exploit windows between the numbers like Seattle's Geno Smith. Powerful right arm of Geno pairs with a decade of experience in the NFL, which allows him to see things really before they occur. We call that anticipation. He's best when things are a little bit messy in the pocket. It's his ability to subtly shift in the pocket, reset, and rip a shot to one of his talented receivers, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, Tyler Lockett, all those receivers to keep that Seahawks offense humming and going early and often in football games. For Miami, that creates a challenge for the corresponding players, and I'm looking at 4 of them. It starts with former Seahawks linebacker Jordan Brooks, now in Miami. He and David Long have been rock solid 2 games into their Dolphins' tenure in 2024, using their instincts and range to impact both the run game and passing game. Now, Pete Carroll may be gone in Seattle, but his fingerprints remain all over that roster, including a run game designed to be the focal point of the offense. That said, Kenneth Walker figures to miss his 2nd consecutive game, and in his absence, Zach Charbonnet was the only back to touch the football on Sunday in New England. He had 38 yards on 14 carries. But the presence of the run game creates Geno Smith's favorite call, play pass. The Dolphins need to slow down the Seahawks run game and play with great conviction and connectivity on the back end between safeties Kevin Harlan and Jordan Poyer to help do that. After 2 games in 5 days, the Dolphins' new safety duo has 10 days to go through tape and see where that chemistry can get better and how it can evolve early in the season. On offense, the Dolphins have to do what makes them tick. Get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle were held to just 65 combined receiving yards Thursday versus Buffalo. They have a big matchup against a trio of starting Seattle cornerbacks who really are the strength of that football team. Devin Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, and Trey Brown are long, physical, feisty cornerbacks that want to press and reroute you at the line of scrimmage. And that pairs with the Seahawks' aggressive scheme on defense in hopes of getting the Dolphins' passing game out of rhythm early on. One way to negate that aggression is to include the dynamic playmakers in the running game. Through 2 games, we've seen plenty of key blocks from the wideouts, but also carries from both those receivers in the run game itself. Jet sweeps, end around, those types of things. What a fun matchup we have Sunday in Seattle as both the Dolphins and Seahawks strengths match up on either side of the football. We are thrilled to be joined today here on Dolphins HQ and the Drive Time podcast by a friend of the podcast now, the great Kevin Harlan. He'll be on the call on Sunday at 4:05 from Lumen Field in Seattle, Dolphins and Seahawks. Kevin, it's great to see you again. I just want to hear your thoughts on that first Dolphins game. You had a chance to watch this team live. You've had a chance to get ready for a second game watching them now, obviously change at the quarterback position. But just your thoughts on the Dolphins from that first game heading into game number 3 here.
I thought it was a credit to the Dolphins. They showed resiliency. Came back all in the wake of what happened before the game to Tyreek. So to come back with that mental gymnastic that they had to perform and kind of get refocused, recentered, get their compass in the right direction to win that game against a quality opponent was incredibly powerful and impactful. But we know they got a talented roster. They're a good playoff caliber team. So anticipation is that we'll get a very clear, definitive view of off-season work, rookies on the team, guys having to step up and see where they are and what kind of team they have. My personal feeling is they'll handle it well. Now they're going up against a 2-0 Seattle team, which is really feeling good about themselves. Winning in New England last week, beating in their home opener Bo Nix in Denver week 1. Their quarterback is playing terrific right now, Geno Smith. So this is, and now the Finns have got to travel, fly 6 hours across the country. He's a guy that grabs the steering wheel with both hands, and I'm anticipating they will react well to this and show a lot of the character and mettle that is on that team, coming off a tough division loss, losing Tua, now navigating those waters. It'll be difficult because all crisis is difficult, but you really don't know what kind of team you have until you go through it, and that's where they are right now. So it makes this game, I think, extra interesting in terms of, if you're a fan, how do we bridge this time with Skylar Thompson or the newly signed Huntley or whatever we decide to do at quarterback.
Yeah, and to your point, the last time the Dolphins did have to go to a backup quarterback, it was that 2022 season, and that was Skylar Thompson's rookie season, coming from, a Kansas State offense that, I make this joke all the time, he's reading a 4-picture poster board off the sideline that has like a popsicle, SpongeBob SquarePants, and like Nick Saban as like the play call, and now he has an actual NFL offense that has, real NFL terms and verbiage that he has to rattle off, and I would imagine that the third year compared to the rookie year for him makes him more comfortable in that sense. So that adds a layer of intrigue to this game for sure. I think another storyline that folks are looking at here for this one, I'm sure you are as well, I want to get your take on it, is the balance of the defensive systems of both of these teams, because they both come from the same tree back in Baltimore last year. Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, Anthony Weaver, the defensive line coach for the Ravens. Now we have a head coach in Seattle for McDonald, and Weaver is the DC here. What do you think about those two guys going up against each other on the defensive side of the football, and how do you think that adds to the intrigue of this matchup?
This is intriguing, with or without Tua. Just the battle of these defensive minds. Listen, the new coach of the Seahawks comes from a defense in Baltimore that was devastatingly good last year. But Anthony Weaver was a part of that. So your setup is perfect. And that, a lot of intrigue. I don't know that Seattle's defense has the parts of the Dolphin defense. I mean, there's some really attractive parts, clearly, with what Miami does on that side of the football. But they're still kind of in that feeling out process, right? He's a first-time defensive coordinator. He's trying to get a feel for things. They're coming off a pretty significant loss to a division foe. So there's a lot here to unpack. But clearly that becomes one of the major storylines of this game.
You will hear him on the call Sunday from Seattle for CBS. We cannot say thank you enough, Kevin. We appreciate your time, and we will see you in the beautiful Pacific Northwest.
Travis, always fun. Nice to get together yearly for this or more. And I hope we get together again this season talking about the Dolphins and another drive to the postseason.
What's up, guys? We're back here in the Baptist Health Studios with The Clicker, which means we have some film to break down, taking a look at Dolphins second-year running back De'Von Achane. During his rookie season, Achane introduced the world to his game-breaking ability. By now, you know all about the 8 touchdowns and 8 yards per carry on just 100 rushes a year ago, but early on in 2024, Achane is proving his ability to be relied upon for a heavy workload on top of the intelligence and processing that pairs so well with that speed to make those gaudy stats possible. Let's go ahead and go right to the film here. And it starts on opening day on a 3rd and 12 play. First drive of the game. You still got fans finding their seats here before the game even gets going. And Achane's already out the gate making big plays. On a quick screen pass, you always start where? With the offensive lineman that get in space. And it starts there with Austin Jackson and Liam Eichenberg. A little swim move around the edge to get off to the perimeter and meet De'Von Achane at the numbers. You get 4 players out wide on this block. That includes a couple of receivers in Jalen Waddle and Braxton Berrios getting key blocks down the field. And from there, Achane makes people miss by doing what he does best with fast, elusive running. Go to the next angle here behind the end zone, the tight copy. We're going to see Achane get the ball in space. You're going to see Austin and Liam get their space in the blocking game. And right here, this is what you always have to have for big plays. Downfield blocking, especially from your wide receivers. Jackson climbing off this block to the second level here as well. Eichenberg going to go ahead and get that safety. So you see it play out here. You get the blocks, you get the explosive play. But Achane's processing is his special power along with the speed, because right here, he could just burrow this thing into this gap and get a few yards, and the punt team comes out, you get a positive play, and you move on to the next drive. But he has bigger things in mind. He sees other daylight and other ways to influence the defense. So right here, he has a 210-pound safety who runs a 4.4 in Andre Sisco, pursuing across the entire field, and he wants to slow him up. So what does he do? That quick jab step inside reduces the pursuit of both of these defenders, and what that does is creates a better blocking angle for Liam Eichenberg, and it creates a worse angle for the tackler that he ends up breaking the tackle of. So this quick decision-making paired with electric speed, Olympic level speed, is really what makes Achane special there. He creates these positive blocking angles. He creates poor angles for tacklers, making another guy miss right there. He is just an elite runner with the football in his hands. That's in space in the screen game. We go forward now to a second play in week 2 against the Buffalo Bills, where he runs inside. And this is where I think Achane's versatility pairs with the versatility of Mike McDaniel and Frank Smith's offense here in Miami. First note here real quick, love the sell job by Alec Ingold, throwing the mailbox up into a middle or too high safety look here. You're not getting that ball, Alec, but because you put the arm up, you keep the safety further off the football. So good sell job there. Let's go ahead and go to the tight copy here to see why Achane made this play special. First, though, before that, the design of the offense. Again, this is why I love the Dolphins' run game and how versatile and flexible and how much different eye candy they can give a defense. So, typically speaking, when you get the offensive line moving in the same direction, that's called zone. And the Dolphins are one of the best outside zone teams in the National Football League. But you also get what's called split flow action. Typically, you'll use a tight end or a fullback or this F piece here to come across the formation to split the flow of your zone blocking. But here, the Dolphins are going to use right guard Liam Eichenberg on that look to counteract this jet motion here by Tyreek Hill. You with me still? It's basically bodies moving in multiple different directions because all these players at the second level are keying different pieces of the Dolphins' front to try to figure out where the heck this ball is going. In fact, you'll see 43 right here. No, not 43. This player, 42. He'll crash the B gap right here. He's thinking about Tyreek on the jet sweep, or maybe even Achane hits it up in that B gap right there. But we have other pieces that tip off other parts of the play. Eichenberg pulling play side here draws this linebacker into this gap, and that actually is where the play is going. But you also see Julian Hill right here. See this zone flow from Rob Jones and from Teron Armstead. Julian Hill has a little stagger block where he takes a couple of steps, bluffs the block on the original man at line of scrimmage, and climbs the second level to go get that linebacker. So you have zone look, you have man gap look, you have jet sweep, all kinds of different activity to confuse this Buffalo defense. And that's exactly what happens for De'Von Achane, who takes this snap from the pistol, little counter step right, and cuts it back across the formation left. And that creates this lane right here. First of all, look at the job of the Dolphins offensive line, creating a big gap right here for Achane to run. But he's not a guy that just puts his head down and runs to daylight like we mentioned on the screenplay. He wants to set these blocks up and create more space for himself after the fact. So that little hesitation step back inside, watch the way it influences this linebacker and creates a better block angle for Julian Hill. He breaks down right there in space, and that gets him off balance, gets him leaning this direction, so Achane can rip it back this way and creates a better blocking angle for Julian Hill. And then we have the one-cut jump speed of Achane, so electric out of those breaks to set that block up and then exploit it for a big play after the fact. It's physical inside running, quick moves in space. This guy has a little bit of everything to his game. Two weeks into the new season, we have a pretty significant trend developing across the National Football League, and it's a league of cycles that has recently given us this new age of the passing game. And as quick as the passing era arrived in the NFL, it peaked. But is the pendulum finally swinging back in the other direction of the previous century? Because going back to 2023, that was the lowest total for a passing league leader, our own Tua Tagovailoa, with over 4,600 yards since 2006, my graduation year, when Drew Brees led the NFL with just over 4,400 yards. Dan Marino had the first 5,000-yard passing season in 1984, before I was born, and it didn't happen again for another 24 years. One instance of 5,000 yards over the NFL's first 93 seasons, and 13 of them in the next 16 years. 5,000-yard passers are looking more and more like a thing of the past. Why is that? Here's one place to start. The number of too-high shells has increased by over 20% over a 5-year period. In just 5 years, that too-high rate has gone from 38% to 62%. And it has caused this ripple effect on numbers, effectively changing the game. First, real quick, too high simply means that two players protect the top of the defense, protect the deep throw. When it's two players, they both have responsibility for one half of the deep part of the field. Cover 2 equals one half of the field. Cover 3 means 3 players each have, you guessed it, a third of the field. And quarters, 1 player for 1 quarter. Although there are variations like quarter, quarter, half, which just means what it says. 2 players have 1 quarter, 1 player has a deep half. Sound good? Confused yet? Back to the ripple effect of this. The depth of target averages are way down, under 7 for the first time in 2 decades. It was 7.5 last year, 6.8 so far this year. We've seen the perception of running backs change over the spread revolution in the NFL, and the math boils it down to the value of a good run versus a good pass. 8 yards per pass is good, and that's better than a good rushing average of 4 yards per carry. Double good, in fact. The cycles reflect a game of cat and mouse. Teams spread it out, defenses adjust, offenses go heavier to account for those light boxes, and that game continues on and on. But there's more to it. It's not as simple as too high equals run the football. Now, don't get it twisted. The spread revolution won, and those days of Mike Allstott donning the big shoulder pads up over his ear holes, those days are gone. The revolution won. We aren't going back to that. But there are some severe zigging to the zagging going on in the NFL. Where teams can limit the explosives and force the offense into longer drives, this creates more chance for errors on offense. Penalties, drops, missed assignments that lead to negative plays. It's a lot tougher to be perfect on 12 plays, for instance, than it is for 1 play to get a receiver behind a defensive back for a long touchdown. In fact, after Miami hit 80 and 63-yard plays against the Jaguars in Week 1, the Bills countered by playing too high at a rate of 75%, the most the Dolphins have seen under Mike McDaniel. This is a big reason why Miami was able to run the ball for over 100 yards in the first half of that game, but the passing game's efficiency just wasn't enough to execute that plan for a full 4 quarters. You have these coverages that are designed to limit the vertical game with a league chock full of elite pass rushers off the edge and inside. If quarterbacks can get through their processes quick, then the negative plays come into play, and a few things will kill a drive, like a sack of the quarterback. To protect against that, to get more pass protectors, to get more run blockers, teams have called upon more fullbacks and tight ends. We know how often Miami uses tight ends and fullbacks, and the world champions have a fullback every year on their roster under Patrick Mahomes, which just tells you how valuable that is to their offensive operation. The defense's counter, these hybrid off-ball linebackers who can come down and play off the edge. Players that allow the defense to counter the offense's use of versatile players like George Kittle in San Francisco, who can be one of the game's best blockers one week and the next week go off for 10 catches for 120 yards. So you get players who typically align in an off-ball position, but can condense down off the edge and change the front of the defense. That's a lot for a quarterback to assess, all within the 40-second shot clock before delay of game arrives. And that's before we get to big nickels from the safety position like Brian Branch in Detroit, Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, or Buffalo's do-it-all slot cornerback Taron Johnson. It's a game of constant cat and mouse, a game of evolution. So the result of all of this, a reduced pass rate. Through 2 weeks, teams are averaging 30 pass attempts per game in 2024. There were just 68 touchdown passes in the NFL through the first 2 weeks of 2024. Last year, 86, 20 fewer. In 2022, there was 105. In 2021, 110. In 2020, it was back to 105 again. Rushes per game, 27.5. We are knocking on the door of a 50-50 run-pass split option. Is this the 80s again? Points per game are down to 21.4. That's lower than last year's lowest in a decade of 21.8. And if you go back to 2020, teams were scoring just a hair under 25 points per game in the NFL. As for the rush pass disparity, last year, 34 to 27 average across the league. In 2 weeks, that 7-play gap has shrunk to less than 3, more than cut in half. And if you go back just a few years, back in 2020 again, it was 36 pass attempts per game to 26 rush attempts per game. So in less than 5 years, we've gone from this 60-40 split to 52-48, nearly even. That's not just a pendulum swing. That's Dan Marino taking the pendulum and humming it back across the other direction like one of those Nerf Vortex footballs that you probably had in the 1990s if you're my age. It's fitting, isn't it? When they were inventing a literal fantasy football to give you and your buddies more long bombs for your backyard games, the NFL was 3 yards and a cloud of dust, baby. But now, after a decade of the aerial revolution, just like high-waisted baggy jeans, we are right back where we were in the era of TGIF programming, pleated khakis, and undercut hairstyles. Just like the game of football, we are a people of cycles. That will do it here for this episode of Dolphins HQ from the Baptist Health Studios. Do not forget to check out the Drive Time podcast hosted by yours truly, available 5 days a week wherever you get your podcasts from. Enjoy an exciting Week 3 in the NFL. We'll be back here next week to get ready for Week 4 against the Tennessee Titans on Monday Night Football. We'll see you soon.